It's a busy week here in the U.S. Thanksgiving is Thursday, and this marks the beginning of the holiday madness. I've already started decorating my house because my mom's here visiting, and it was a fun thing to do together, but it's also this season of saying yes far too often and then ending up totally exhausted. So in today's episode of Midlife by Design, we're going to talk about how to say no. I've encouraged you in past episodes to say no in order to slow down, to take more space for yourself, to make more space for yeses that actually resonate with you. But this episode really dives into the how. I'm your host, Lori Lisai, human design coach, here to help you as a midlife woman use human design to shed others' expectations and be who you came here to be. Let's dive in. Hello, my beautiful midlife mavens. Welcome back to Midlife by Design. Today, we're talking about how to say no. And as I record this podcast, we're coming into the holiday season, and I can't think of anything better than understanding and learning how to say no as an act of self-care and empowerment during this midlife phase of ours. Saying no is part of setting boundaries. It helps us to align with our human design by helping us to manage the energy that we do have and not take on things that ask for resources that we don't have, that we aren't coming consistently to the table with. I want to acknowledge that this is not an easy thing for most of us, especially in midlife, because we've spent decades in people-pleasing mode and feeling guilty about saying no and being afraid that we're going to be rejected in some way and not take care of that core need of belonging. So I want to acknowledge that and name it right here so you understand that I'm coming to this podcast to offer you some practical ways to say no and to encourage you to be kind with yourself and understand that where you make compromises are really just places for realignment. And as long as you're noticing them as compromises, then that's the first step to actually changing them. Saying no and protecting your time and energy and authenticity is so important. And it really ties into this transformational period in our life when saying no and learning how to say no, when we're practicing slowing down in ways and we're understanding how our body's needs are different. Saying no creates a space for us to say yes to things that actually do align with us. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to say no, and there are a few resources that I'm drawing on specifically for this podcast episode, and I will list these in the show notes, but one of them is Terry Cole's Boundary Boss, which if you haven't read, I will put the link in the show notes, but a really great place to start to kind of understand boundaries. And so again, I'm going to acknowledge that being uncomfortable with saying no is probably going to be the norm for a little bit as you begin to practice with this. And that's just because of societal conditioning. Okay, it's not because you're being unkind. It's not because you're an asshole. It's not because there's something wrong with you. All of that is just societal conditioning. So some steps to take to say no with confidence would be the following. Number one, pause before you react. So when a request comes in, practice learning how to assess the request before you commit. And for those of you with sacrals, especially, so generators and manifesting generators, this can be challenging because you might get a huge sacral yes in the moment. And if it's a huge sacral yes, and you are a generator or manifesting generator who has a sacral authority, then you can feel free to say yes. However, if it's not a hell yes in your sacral, and or if you are an emotional authority, and or if you are any one of the other types, projector, reflector, manifester, then practicing learning how to assess the actual ask before committing to it is so, so important. So learn how to say something like, let me get back to you on that. Or this sounds super exciting and I'm going to get back to you. Pausing before you actually react or before you give an answer. The next thing would be using neutral language. So instead of saying, oh my God, no, it's not going to happen, being super blunt, you could say, if that feels uncomfortable, that doesn't work for me, or I can't commit to that right now. Those are a couple of examples that are perhaps a little bit softer that could ease the transition into learning how to say no. And there's no need to over explain. I think this is one of the pitfalls that women can fall into, is this need to explain and explain and explain and say, like, why can't I do it? I feel like I have to say why I can't do the thing because I'm saying no. And the fact is that you don't actually have to explain yourself. It's okay to just say no. No is a complete sentence. So reframing saying no as an exercise in strengthening is one way to kind of look at it. It's like if you're lifting weights, for example, and you are working out, then that is a practice, right? It gets better over time. You get stronger over time with more repetitions. So the more you practice, the less daunting it becomes, the less your heart may race, or the less you'll get like a pit in your stomach. So just understanding that those types of physical reactions are part of the learning process and part of the deconditioning that we're working on here. So try replacing thoughts that are coming in like, oh, I'm being such an asshole, or I'm being so mean here, with I'm actually being clear and kind with myself. I'm being clear with this person in order to be kind to myself, to protect my energy, to make room for more yeses. So I wanted to give you 10 ways that are, I think, pretty graceful ways to say no, tailored for specific situations. So if you want to politely decline something, you can say, thank you for thinking of me, but I'm going to have to pass. That's it. You don't have to say anything else. Oh my God, I know. Doesn't that feel like so uncomfortable and like your skin is itchy even outside of menopause? Yes, that may be the case, and it's okay. Think of it as conditioning just shedding away as you are saying it and you feel that discomfort. The second example would be an honest no. I'm not able to commit to this right now. Period. I just can't do it. And you can let the other person fill in the blanks, but you just simply say, I'm not able to commit to it. You can say something related to time, like, this isn't a good time for me, but I really appreciate the offer. Again, there's kindness in there. Don't say you appreciate the offer, though, if you really don't. If somebody's asking you to come clean toilets and you're like, fuck no, I am not doing that, then it's okay to just say, this isn't a good time for me, period. But you can also add, I appreciate the offer if you really do appreciate the offer, but maybe it's just not a good time for you. Number 4 would be delegating. You could say, I can't do this, but have you considered somebody else? This one is a little trickier because I don't want us to get in the practice of pushing it off to somebody else as a safety mechanism. And there's a bit of a flavor of people pleasing and like, oh, well, I can't do it, but I'm going to offer up somebody else. However, if it's something that is a good opportunity, feels like a good fit for another person, and it's something that you don't necessarily feel aligned with, then this is a good option. Number 5 is I've made some other priorities that I need to focus on right now. That's basically focusing on your own commitments and speaking to the fact that you do have priorities. And it's true that those priorities take time. So that's what you're going to focus on. Number 6 is about reassessing and maybe coming back. So going back to that idea of asking for more time to think about it. Can I think about this and get back to you? I want to make sure I give it the attention it deserves. This would be for something that really feels like a maybe for you. Again, going back to the idea of if you're a generator or a manifesting generator, if your sacral is really excited and popping off, and you're not a sacral authority who can speak right in the moment to what it is that you want to do, then using this sentence is a great sentence for you to just give yourself a little bit more time. If you're an emotional authority, if you're a reflector, a manifestor, or a projector, then this is a great sentence for you to use to give you a little bit more time to reflect on it if it feels like it's a maybe for you. If it's a flat out no, I would go back to one of the other sentences that I gave you, like, thank you for thinking of me, but I'm going to have to pass on this one. Number 7, I trust you'll figure this out, but I am unable to help at this time. So a little bit of confidence building for the other person, potentially, if they need your help with something that's going to take some brain power that you just cannot dive into. This is a way to reflect for them your belief in them and then set that boundary as you being unable to actually step in and help out. Number 8, I'm not able to take this on, but I wish you the best with it. Fair enough. Easy enough. I'm envisioning an answer like this coming to something that lands in my inbox that's a random question like, will you be an affiliate? Blah, blah, blah. If it's a product that I'm not interested in, I don't want to use, I haven't ever tried, this is a simple one. I'm not able to take this on, but I wish you the best with it. And again, I wish you the best with it. That to me, it's a bit of people pleasing. However, if you feel honestly that way, I think you can come to it with that authenticity. If you could care less, if it is something that you've never heard of and it just seems, way out of alignment for you, I'm not able to take this on, period. You don't need to add anything to that. Number 9, this isn't something I can do, but I can suggest some other options that might help. So this one's similar to, instead of saying who might help, perhaps you have some options that might help. I've definitely used this before when there are tools out there that I know of that can help people. And I don't necessarily need to be the one doing the work, and maybe I'm not interested in it, so I will direct them to those other resources. Again, if it feels authentic, if it feels like you want to spend the time doing that, if you truly want to be helping this person and that is worth your time. If it's not, just this isn't something I can do right now, period. Ending it right there. And then this one is perhaps the most aligned for emotional authorities, especially, but I would say in alignment with human design in general, is that doesn't feel like the right fit for me. But thanks for asking. And really knowing what energy you bring to the table and what your strengths and gifts are, which you will understand after diving into and developing a deep understanding of your human design. This is easy to say when you understand those things. So that doesn't feel like the right fit for me, but thank you for asking. And of course, you know that I am here to help with you understanding your human design. Practical exercises, which I want to give you for practicing this, because these 10 different ways of saying no and any that you might think of on your own can be challenging when we're actually met with the moment in conversation. So I encourage you to do these practices to warm you up. Use your imagination to imagine some different scenarios where you'll be getting asks. Look, we're coming into the holidays, so I can bet you're going to get all kinds of asks. So some practice can be really good. And I know we don't have a ton of time, but I would suggest practicing in the mirror, maybe when you're getting ready in the morning, or you could even do this in the car and practice getting your words out. It's good to use a mirror just because you can see yourself doing it and you get that facial reaction. You pick up on the nuances of what's going on. So go through some of the examples of no's that I have given and say them out loud and think about what might be the requests that you're facing. And then just say, thank you for asking, but that's not something I can actually do right now. Or I am so honored that you thought of me, but I'm going to have to pass this time. Those are just a couple of examples, but going back to the other 10 examples that I gave you as well. You could write a script where you prepare a go-to phrase or two for saying no in different scenarios, like when it comes to work or when it comes to social situations or when it comes to being with your family. What are a couple of quick phrases that you could potentially use? Another practical exercise you could do is role play with a friend. Maybe while you're out for a run, you could partner with somebody that you trust and just talk about like common scenarios and then say, okay, maybe our friend is asking you to volunteer to do something that you don't really want to do. Like, how are you going to say no? Or your cousin is asking you to participate in their fundraiser and you're already stretched so thin. So just some examples, and then you can role play. And what would be a great bonus is if you give your friend that you're role playing with a kind of a caricature of the people that you're imagining and have them push back, just so you get some of that practice with really standing firm in your no without over explaining. Another practical example I would give you is just to start small. Begin with low stakes situations. So things like an email comes into your inbox, unsubscribe to it. If it's really not lighting you up, especially as we come into the end of the year, it's a great time to go through and just start unsubscribing to these emails that are going to get dumped into your inbox during Black Friday week. So unsubscribe. That's a great way to say no. Declining an invitation to an event that you're not actually excited about, like the cookie bake-off or something. I mean, whatever. If it was me, I would definitely be fucking making time for a cookie bake-off. But if it's you and you don't want to make time for the cookie bake-off, especially if you got to make cookies to go to it, then, thanks, but I'm going to pass at this time. Just thinking about kind of those low stakes things where you're not going to be hurting people's feelings. And that is going to help you to build confidence and evidence for you to understand that, yes, you can do this for yourself. This is something that you can do. And I also want to encourage you to just celebrate your wins. Like when you actually say no, celebrate that. It is so hard for women to do this by and large, because of our conditioning, because of how we are living and what is expected of women. And so every single time you are able to say no, I want you to acknowledge that time, celebrate it as a victory, give yourself a cheers, give yourself a hug, right on, give yourself a high five in the mirror, whatever you need to do to reflect on it and think about the space that it creates for you to fill with something better, with something more aligned to your energy. And use those examples as evidence of your building self-respect versus selfishness. Some of the common pitfalls, I mentioned one earlier, but avoiding soft no's, like saying maybe when you actually really mean no. If it's a hell no, then don't say maybe. It's like this energy tendril that gets put out there. It's just waiting for this to be finished and decided upon. And really all along, you just meant no. So it's better and kinder to both parties for you to just say no. And another pitfall, which I'm sure you can relate to, I know I can, is falling into the trap of guilt-ridden and driven yeses. You become guilt-ridden because you've got this thought on repeat over and over in your mind, like, oh, I really should do this. I really should do this. This is the right thing to do for this situation. And it's not necessarily the right thing to do for you, though. And so you end up driving the yes with your guilt because you're feeling guilt-ridden, and instead you need to be brave and say, no, thank you. So another thing I wanted to talk about, which is the human design component, of course, comes from an article that Christy Inga wrote recently. She talked about the human design centers and no's and how we can be prone to conditioning and taking on other people's energy in our undefined centers. So last week, I published an episode on the pod about our undefined centers, episode number 28, and how those can take us out of alignment. And I want to just clarify here because I did have some listener feedback about our centers and some confusion. And I want to explain again that everybody has the centers in your chart. Like every human on the planet has the 9 centers. However, some of those centers are going to be undefined in your chart, potentially, and some of them are going to be defined in your chart, potentially. The reason I say potentially is because reflectors, for example, have all 9 centers undefined. However, there are also individuals walking around on the planet who have all 9 centers defined. And the difference between definition and non-definition in this case is whenever it's colored in. So if it's colored in, it is defined. If it's not colored in, it is undefined. And when we have centers that are undefined, it means that that's where we are really prone to conditioning, to taking on other people's expectations and kind of acting outside of the kind of energy that we truly bring to the table on a regular basis, on a consistent basis. It's like us being not really who we are. And so it's important to understand what undefined centers we have because it can help us pinpoint where might we be saying yes to things that really aren't meant for us, or where might we be taking on energy that's truly not ours to carry or to try to express. So getting back to the idea of saying no. With an undefined head, if you have the very top center of your chart is undefined, that is the head center, this is an opportunity for you to say no to overthinking. Haha, right? Overthinking, and I say haha because this can be a real challenge for people who have an undefined head because we can get wrapped up in other people's problems and answers, really seeking answers for things. And the undefined head is an invitation for us to see possibility. So saying no to solid, concrete answers and instead being really open to possibility. If you have an undefined ajna or mind, then saying no to rigid ideas or viewpoints that don't resonate really deeply with you, this is a great place to say no. The beauty of having an undefined mind is that you have the ability to see many different perspectives. However, you also have values as a human being, and what's important with an undefined mind is being able to say no to things that don't align with your values. If you have an undefined throat, then saying no to speaking up just to be noticed or appreciated is really important here. So undefined throats have the ability to amplify other people's voices. You can be open to helping other people be heard and understood. However, if you are just speaking up because you're afraid you're not being noticed for your contributions, then you really want to come back into alignment and just understand that that appreciation will come. You don't need to put yourself out there just to say words because you feel like you have to fill the space. Undefined G center, which is the next center down, it's the diamond-shaped one. It's saying no to environments that don't feel aligned to you and or relationships with people that don't feel aligned to you. So If you're undefined here, it means that you have the ability to kind of be a chameleon. You shapeshift and change who you are really based on the situation and or the environment that you're in. So if you're in an environment that feels awful or that you feel awful in, then this is an opportunity for you to say no and make a different choice. If you have an undefined heart or ego, that's the little triangles sort of to the right of the body graph chart, then saying no to proving your worth, especially if it comes with overcommitting. And because only about 30% of us have the ego defined. So roughly 70% of us are walking around with this undefined heart. And it means that we have so many humans who are overcommitting, and especially women. So it's really important for us to say no. And a lot of times when we have this undefined in our design, it means that we're saying yes to try to prove that we're worthy in some way. And we really just need to set the boundary and say no. If you have an undefined sacral, so this would be projectors, reflectors, and manifestors, then saying no when you have reached the point of enough, like enough is enough. I have put out enough effort. I need to say no and protect my energy. This is an important lesson for people who have an undefined sacral, is not to just say yes because you need to feel like you're looking busy and you're keeping up with the hustle and bustle. Protect your energy and understand that anytime you're with a sacral being, you're going to be amplifying theirs. So it's important to be in your own space and separate yourself so that you can tune into what energy you do have and give yourself that needed rest. If you have an undefined solar plexus, which is if you're looking at your body graph chart, it's to the right of the sacral, then here you're going to want to say no to absorbing other people's emotions. This is really about boundary setting with your emotional energy and understanding that if you are undefined in this area, you're naturally going to take on other people's emotions. So understanding that you're like a sieve, you're just letting them come in and pass through you. You do not want to absorb them and act as if they are part of you because they are other people's emotions. You let those instead flow through you. So a nice practice during the holidays when you're going to be with family and people who maybe you don't see very often by choice, who could potentially be draining your energy, is to take some time, go to the bathroom, build in regular bathroom breaks, and just do a shake in the bathroom to shake off that energy and let it just fall off of you and come back to your neutral emotional state. Moving on to the spleen, which is the triangle facing in toward the sacral on the left-hand side of your chart. Saying no to holding on to things or people out of fear would be something that I encourage you to do if you have an undefined spleen. So the spleen is our center for safety and security. And oftentimes, if it's undefined, you can find yourself gripping for dear life onto things that you think are going to keep you. And then if you have your root undefined, which is the very bottom center, you are going to say no to unnecessary urgency. If you have this center undefined, you are always under pressure to get things done on this imaginary timeline that you feel like it's got to be done. And this is an opportunity for you to question that and ask yourself, what happens if I don't do this thing? Is the world going to fall apart? How is it really going to affect things? And if I do accomplish this thing, does that feel good to me? Does it truly feel good to me? Does it feel good because I feel one of those signatures? I feel satisfaction. I feel delighted. I feel surprised. I feel at peace. Are those the feelings that are coming up, imagining them if I finish this? Or am I doing it to please other people? So those are some examples from a human design perspective where we could be invited to say no. And remembering that if you don't have your chart, get it at my website, lorileeside.com. Go to get your chart and just take a look and see, do I have these centers defined or undefined? And then listening to the earlier part in the episode, how can I say no when it's time for me to say no? I want to encourage some self-reflection, and you can do this while you're going for a walk or a run or in your car or as a practice in the morning or the evening. But I just want you to think about two questions to help you frame some opportunities for saying no. The first would be, where do you feel most drained in your life? In what area? Is it work? Is it relationships? Is it with your family? Is it spiritually? Is it with your well-being, your exercise, your food? Where are you feeling most drained in your life? And then the second question I want to offer is, which of your undefined centers in human design might possibly be influencing what feels like an inability to say no? So which undefined centers that I just went through feel like, oh, I might have a lot of conditioning happening here. I might have a lot of societal expectations that are pressuring me to say yes, and that I'm feeling really challenged with saying no. And then, of course, I'd like to invite you to book a human design call with me, because we can take a look at what is happening in your chart and decide what would be a good course of action for us in terms of getting the support that you need, whether it be a simple one-off intuitive session or a longer coaching container. And of course, the Wild Women by Design retreat is coming up. We start in January. So if you are looking for an opportunity to learn to honor your boundaries in a supportive environment with other women who are doing the same thing and really tapping into this new wild woman part of you, then we would love to have you. I'll have the link in the show notes for more information on that as well. And I have a quote that I want to share to wrap up this episode that is from Terry Cole, the writer of Boundary Boss. And she says, "Boundaries are not walls. They are the gates and fences that allow you to enjoy the beauty of your own garden." As a gardener, that quote really resonates with me. So I hope that that imagery helps to inspire you. And I am wishing you all a fantastic, beautiful, peaceful Thanksgiving holiday, and wishing you some quiet and some slowing down this week, and being present with all of the beauty that this holiday brings. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Midlife by Design. I hope you feel like you have some powerful tools to add to your midlife toolkit to help you create a more aligned life by saying no. If you're curious about how your human design can help support you in this phase of life, book a free call with me. Let's chat about your unique purpose and how you can shake shit up to genuinely live it instead of living on autopilot, letting the days pass when nothing seems to make sense anymore and you're feeling more and more restless and unfulfilled. Human design can help bring clarity and give you the permission you didn't even know you needed to finally make the changes you desire. As we close, I'm sending you the strength to release what no longer serves you, joy to fill your days, and clarity to fully be who you came here to be.